Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. This is your legal BFF, Girija Patel. Thank you for tuning in. I am so grateful for every single one of you for tuning in and listening, because this is what Law Chat is about. It's a place for you to be inspired, a place for you to gain some more wisdom and knowledge about your industry, but a place also where you can receive mentorship through storytelling. Thank you so much. Now, I know that before we walk into this next episode, whether you're tuning in through your iTunes or through other form of a podcast, or whether this is on YouTube, I would love for you to share this information with someone else, somebody who is your friend, your family, a colleague, somebody in your community, someone who can really be inspired by this as well and benefit from the information and from the stories that we're sharing with you today. Law Chat is to help the community, is to boost the community, is to inspire the community. And I want you to help me to do that. So thank you so much for that. Let's get started. Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat. Clutter in the house can cause clutter in the mind. I firmly believe this concept. I practice it also. I'm constantly decluttering my home, my office, but I just feel like it keeps building back up. And so I feel like our guest today, who is also a super special guest of mine because she's a former client of mine as well when they were just starting their business, she is a KonMari Method expert, which I am so excited to have her here today, talk to us about what that method is, how she even started into this business and helping others organize their lives. She is the co-founder alongside Jane McCullough of Simply Maven, which is a organizational coaching company. She teaches others how to organize and help them and guide them and navigate them through the whole decluttering phase. And it's not just a, hey, let me come in and clean your home. It is, let me organize your life in a way where we know where things are. There's a system in place. I know I need your services. I'm just like running away from it right now, but I'm just like, oh my gosh. Well, welcome to Law Chat. I'm so excited to have you with us, Ashley, and just really excited to hear about how you got started and how partnership looks like, what it's all about. And then, of course, the KonMari Method. You know, some of us have seen it, some of us have read about it and heard about it, but today we can actually get it straight from the expert. So welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I love chatting about this and all things organizing and how that applies to just like lifestyle and all that stuff. So I can't wait to dive in.
Yeah. So tell me, were you always a clean person? Like, were you always like the organization person, or did you start something different when you first started? And how did you get into this?
Yes, that's such a great question. So I was not one of those people that was like always had this super tidy room. That was not me. I was a very organized student, and I've always been very organized kind of in my academic professional realm. But that did not translate to my room or my living space. I would say, and I see this a lot in clients, I was organized, but not tidy. And what I mean by that is I had a lot of things and they had homes, but I did not practice the don't put it down, put it away until post KonMari. I was definitely like, I'm going to just put this down wherever, and then I'll put it away on Saturday. Like that was kind of like this cycle that I grew up with and just had. And as I came into young adulthood and had my own living space and was introduced to actually Marie's book, I was feeling very busy. My job at the time was really ramping up. I was a fitness instructor, but I also worked behind the scenes for a rapidly growing franchise. And so was helping them with training and onboarding and lots of things. So things were very busy and hectic. And I definitely had this feeling like I wanted to come home to a more relaxing environment. You know, I needed that place to really recharge. And when I read Marie's book, that was what really motivated me. I felt like I was kind of approaching this burnout position, and I could kind of see some of those warning signs, and I was like, I need to do something in order to better manage myself. So giving myself a home environment where I could do that was really, really important. And then it sort of aligned with me getting pregnant with my first son too, which also kind of really prompted those like strong nesting urges. So I think knowing how busy I was, knowing that I was about to add this other factor into my life made it feel very essential that I be proactive about it and, you know, simplify things before they got even crazier.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I actually love how distinguish between a tidy room and being organized in your methods with regards to work or school, education. I feel like I'm kind of like that too, actually. Like
Mhm.
my room is tidy, but it's still like there's stuff. There's stuff.
Mhm.
Piles.
Yeah.
The piles is what kills me.
Yes.
The only one out there complaining about the piles. And
Yes.
it's just, you're busy, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or whether you're a working mom or whatever you're doing, people's
Yeah.
lives are busy. And sometimes we do put all of that stuff to the side. But before we get into all of that, I know that you were saying you were a health, a fitness instructor, and but so
Mhm.
how did you take that shift? I know you were pregnant, but then a lot of people who are pregnant still go back to being a fitness instructor also.
Yeah.
So then where did that shift happen? And was it a hard shift to make, or was it just like a no-brainer?
Gosh, both. I've been doing so. I did go back to fitness instruction after my first son. And I mean, I love that. It was a profession I was very, very passionate about. And I really enjoyed the health and wellness aspect of it and helping other women manage stress and reach exercise goals, all that kind of stuff. So I did go back, but I had also just found this KonMari method to be very helpful. And all I could think about like every day was just like, I'm so glad I did this. I'm so glad I did this. And then in conversations with other people, just realizing how many other people could be like they were struggling with the same things that I was struggling with. And I really felt like I like tapped into something that really helped me manage that. Right. And so when my son was about a year old, I was kind of feeling the need to just do something different, just kind of like starting to shift and just kind of do something for me. And so I honestly went to the second ever KonMari consultation, like training. So the first one was in New York, second one was in San Francisco. That's where I was. This is end of 2016. And I just went because one, I just kind of wanted to like take a mom trip, like for
Yeah.
me, just take a little break. And I was just really fascinated by this. So it was purely exploratory and personal. But I was really intrigued by it, met a lot of really interesting people. I had been working for small businesses for a long time. And so that entrepreneurial seed had sort of been planted. But I also, having worked for small businesses, knew what it took to make that leap. And so I just wanted to really be very thoughtful about it, especially being a young mom. Am I ready for this? Am I ready to kind of take on all that that entails?
Mhm.
So I did the whole side hustle thing, the gradual side hustle transition. So I taught my fitness classes and I would just kind of slowly work with practice clients. And actually the first client I ever worked with was actually Jane, who's now our co-owner. And so I just sort of built things up from there, and it kind of just reached a tipping point. And a lot of things happened all at once that just kind of like shoved me into it,
Mhm.
right? So we were working on growing our family, but I did end up having a miscarriage between my two sons. And so that kind of was just like, okay, well, if that's not happening, business is picking up, like maybe I should just go for this. And so I filed my DBA, and then I 2 weeks later figured out I was pregnant with baby number two. And then 2 months later, Marie's Netflix like thing
Yes.
dropped. And it was just like, okay, here we go. Like
Yeah.
it's all happening. So I'm growing a business, I'm growing a baby, and this is all coming together. And something at that point kind of had to give. And we had moved to the suburbs because to be close, just for all sorts of reasons, be
Yeah.
close to my husband's job, more room for the family, that kind of stuff. And I couldn't make the commute to my old job anymore. And I was like, I need to take control. So I had to let go of fitness, which was really hard to make that shift because I had been in it for so long. But it definitely felt like that moment. It's just like, if I don't let go of this, I cannot commit to this other thing. Like I can't
Right.
have 2 feet in both of them. And that was a hard mindset shift to make. But the practice of KonMari and figuring out like, what is your ideal lifestyle? What sparks joy for you? What are you going to prioritize? What are you going to let go? Sometimes it's really, really hard to let go of some of those things, but you have to let go of them in order
Mm.
to embrace something even better. Right. So
Oh my
that's kind of
gosh.
the transition.
I love it. And I truly love this story because it kind of talks about, if you're listening, you can hear that you were put in a place that you didn't even expect to be in. You just kind of went there because your curiosity was just like, what is this? It's sparking that. And a lot of times we do that. And I know that when I first started getting into the creative entrepreneur world, I also was very happenstance. It just kind of plopped me. I just kind of went to this random, it's not random, like it's the person who does it. I love her, Brianna Pear, but she was hosting this blogger conference. I did not belong here. Like I was not a blogger at all, like from any aspect. But because of that, I am doing what I'm doing today. And I love that because of that one conference you went to for the KonMari Method, you are doing what you're doing today. Plus, it also helped you navigate out of that confusion or that, that crossroads of where should I go? Should I be here or should I be there? And I think, that's where I feel like these kind of methods can really be helpful for clarity purposes, even in our businesses and not just, in our homes. And so that's, I love that story because I think a lot of people are there sometimes, post pandemic, a lot of us were in that, what should we do? Should we go back to work? Should we do this? Should we do that? Yeah. And so kind of just looking and seeing where the path has taken you can really help you take the next step also.
Yeah. And I've said this before about the method, what I really love about it is it takes sort of this kind of big philosophy, but it really breaks it down into actionable steps, like very practical steps, but that can be applied to your shoes or like your blue jeans. But then through the practice of that small skill on something kind of very tiny and very practical and maybe not particularly threatening, you can then extrapolate those skills to bigger, more important areas of your life. And so just by kind of starting to consider, well, what kind of outfit do I want to wear? Does that translate into what am I going to do during my day that's going to then generate that kind of outfit? And then like, where do I want to take my life with that? And so it's really, what it really boils down, I think is what the heart of it is, just sort of teaching people to be intentional. There's sort of this conversion. So like listening to your gut, which I think Spark Joy kind of is, it's really about starting to hone your intuition and listen to your own voice and trying to kind of shut out extra noise and just really being able to tune into that. Mm-hmm. And then along with that, bringing in intention to that. So, okay, like this is what I know is resonating. Now, how can I intentionally put that into action and actually bring it into fruition? And so it's like, you've got the idea of like, this is my ideal lifestyle. Now, how do I actually create an environment around me that then supports and steers me towards what that lifestyle looks like? It's not necessarily a one and done kind of thing. It's a process, but it's a really, I think when you start to live that way, it just shifts everything.
Yeah.
In a positive way.
I think intentionality is just so important. And it's always the start of the next chapter. It's always a start of growth as well. Tell us what the KonMari Method is. Like we're talking about it, but we haven't really discussed exactly what it is. So tell us, what is that?
Absolutely.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately, and they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation.
So KonMari, we're dropping this term. Some people are like, oh yeah, I know what that is, old news. Some people are like, what? KonMari, what? So KonMari, Marie Kondo might be a little bit more familiar. She's the founder of the KonMari Method, and you've heard us use the term Spark Joy, which is also very heavily associated. So Marie wrote a couple books. The first one was The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which outlined her KonMari Method. She's also had Netflix shows at this point, which is what really kind of propelled her into popular knowledge. But the method it's just a method of decluttering and organizing your home. The steps, though, are kind of like the rules, the 6 rules are like, they're pretty broad, honestly. And so you have, what we do for Simply Maven is we break it down so that it becomes really tangible and actionable for people. So the rules are, first you have to commit, which is all about that mindset shift. So just commit that this is something that you're going to do. I'm now going to shift myself from untidy person to tidy person. I'm willing and ready to make a change. And I understand that that's going to have to come with adjustments in my thoughts and behaviors. Otherwise, we're just going to end up in the same place, right? The second is all about envisioning that ideal lifestyle. So that's rule or step number 2, spending some time with that. And of course, if you don't have those 2, you can still do all the steps and it'll be great, but your chances of just kind of going back and rebounding are going to be higher, right? So doing a little bit of that work up front makes the whole rest of the thing impactful. So visioning, what is your why? What is your purpose for doing this? And like, what direction do you want to go in? Then you want to tidy by category, which is a big kind of differentiator for KonMari. Some organizers focus on categories. Most, I think, traditionally focus on spaces. So we're going to do this drawer, we're going to do this room. Marie really focuses on categories. Little caveat, if you're an already pretty organized person, your home is probably already well categorized. But for people who really struggle with clutter, the categories tend to be very spread out. And that's when we feel very scattered. And I think also because we tend, at least the clients we deal with and kind of the culture we live in here in Texas and in general America, we tend to have, the larger the home, the easier it is to spread out. And so you've got a little bit of this category there and a little bit of this category there. And so tidying by category, it just makes things a little bit more efficient. And then from tidy by category, you want to finish discarding first. So you want to edit everything before you get to the organizing. And then you also want to make sure that it sparks joy. And I think that's where people sometimes, that phrase, people either love it or they're just like, that is dumb.
Oh my God.
Or like,
I'm going to tell you.
So some people are like, hard pass. And some people are like, this is life-changing. And to the people who kind of gravitate towards hard pass, I do get it. I really, when I read critiques of it, I really think we have to come to a common definition of what joy means or what spark joy means. And if you're defining spark joy as just like, oh, this top's super cute, then yes, maybe evaluating everything in your life is going to seem frivolous if that's the standard. But if you're looking at spark joy as something that's really more about kind of like you feel this wholehearted yes in your gut. You know what I mean? Like that's more what spark joy is. Like you get this like feeling like this item is in alignment with who I am and where I want to be. And this item is not. And that's really, so sometimes for people, they're like, I love the method. I want to be on board, but this particular term is not working for me. So sometimes we'll kind of like chat it out. We'll pull out like, what is the question that's going to kind of help you, and a lot of times, is this in alignment with my goals, or is this in alignment with who I am? And that really helps people. That's really what it comes down to.
I like that you said that, because if you see the show sometimes, or even if you've read the book, or you just have a conversation with other friends who've read it or not, like there's a part that I remember, which I actually, okay, so funny. I did this whole thing to my closet, right? I literally got rid of I don't know, 75% of my closet or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And this was a while back. Now it's all back. It's all back to normal again. We have relapsed, but so it was about like, taking this particular piece of clothing. And I like that you define joy the way you did. It's like alignment. It brings good memories, or it brings joy just thinking about it. You feel good about it. You're not feeling negative emotions. You're not feeling negative energy. And I remember I don't remember where I saw this, but it was just like, you take the clothing, you hold it, and you're like, how do I feel? And I think that part is what's kind of like, for some people, they're like, what the heck is that? Like, who does that?
Yes.
But I tell you, I tell you that it truly makes a difference, because there are definitely some pieces of articles of clothing that we might buy, or we might have worn in a season that was hard, or a season that we weren't loving ourselves as much. And so those negative feelings come back again with that particular clothing or other article.
There's so much going on in everything you just said. I love that. So I think it's very our culture, and Marie's Japanese, and I think that there's definitely a certain part of our culture that's just like, that's not practical enough. It's a little too, like, it's digging too much into the emotions. But if we go back to that idea of intention, that's actually where the power lies. And I think sometimes we're kind of like, hustle, hustle, hustle. I just want to clean up my closet and go. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. But then sometimes the rebound then comes because we didn't actually like stop to think about this. We kind of just like leapt, right? So I love, what's the quote? It's like, wisdom without action is useless, and action without wisdom is fruitless, right? So we really want to marry those two together. And so I think when you slow down and you hold your clothes, it actually makes you just slow down and pay a little bit more attention. And I know a lot of us are busy, and and I understand like wanting to be efficient with time and stuff like that, for sure. But I think I've also used the phrase, if you don't have time to do it right, when do you have time to do it again? It's like, it's really taking the time to really be intentional about it. It's going to make the difference and give you that return on investment, for sure. And there's all sorts of emotions that we attach to our things, subconsciously or not. It's having an effect on you. I mean, you may not be aware of it, but it's living there and it's triggering that stuff, whether or not it's at the forefront of your mind, for sure. And sometimes we're attached to things. We have good memories, but I think it's important with this method to ask, is this in alignment with me now? And this kind of goes back to my origin story, if you will. It's like, I have great memories attached to my previous career, but it wasn't in alignment with where I needed to be now. And so sometimes we even have to let go of things that we like. That's where the spark joy is actually a little bit deeper than just like, oh, I like this. Like, that's not necessarily what it means. It really means like, is this in alignment with my greater intentions towards the life I want to live?
Gosh, I just love all of this. Okay, so I like because it's so true. Some listeners or some people, they might be thinking, oh, this is all just so frou-frou, and this is just so intangible stuff. Like, it doesn't make sense, right?
Sure.
But I don't believe that, actually. I truly believe in energies. I truly believe in your gut and how you're feeling and alignment. And I think all of what you just said not only applies to our personal home life, but it also applies to our business life, our work life, our professional life. So if we were to take the KonMari method and apply it to our businesses as an entrepreneur, what are some takeaways that we could do and start applying it? And I love that you say alignment, because I'm a true believer of having values set up in your business and making sure that whatever you're doing is aligned with those values, because eventually it'll cause a lot of friction and heartache. But how can we take KonMari and apply it to our businesses?
Yeah. Well, one of her follow-up books is actually called The Joy at Work, which she did with a organizational psychologist over at Rice, actually. So that's, if you want to get all of that, I highly recommend that. I also think Essentialism is a very KonMari for business book as well. And some of the kind of key thoughts from those things, you take that frou-frou overall, like what are my values? What are the priorities? And now, like, how do I apply this to projects? So, let's say to me, it's like, what are the different categories of my business and versus like the different categories of my home, or the different categories of my to-do list, right? You've got your high priority items, your kind of medium priority items, your low task items. And it's really, you start to think about, okay, well, what are my business goals, and what are the things that are going to move me towards those goals, and what are the things that are distractions from those goals. And so I do think that you can have clutter on your to-do list or on your calendar in the same way that you can have clutter in your closet. And when you kind of sit down, and we do this exercise with the closet or any space when people have a lot and they're like, oh, I don't know what to begin. The joy check process of KonMari is to take everything out. And we encourage people to pick your 5 favorite items first, and then continue to choose what to keep from there. And what that does is that really kind of like clarifies like what are the most important things. And then it becomes really easy to let go of the non-important things. So you focus on what to keep first. And once you sort of fill your closet with what you want to keep, then it's actually really easy. Like, it looks full and it looks beautiful. And you're like, I don't need the rest of that pile. So the way this can translate into, you can do it with big goals, you can do it with your daily to-do list, you can kind of, choose one or the other, but brain dump maybe all of your, like, let's do big dream projects, brain dump all the big dream projects and pick your favorite 3. and then think about, okay, what is that going to take? Where can I put that on my calendar? And figure out what's going to be your focus for now. It doesn't mean that you're not necessarily going to get to those other things. It just means that like, we're going to like table them, because this is what's bringing us joy. This is what is in alignment with our goals and with our intention for our work life for now. And so those are going to be the focus. And then from there, what are the to-dos that come from there? And you just kind of keep working that backwards, right? So you can either decide that you're going to let some of those things go, or you're just going to table them for the moment, or you just start to figure out like those things just fall off, like they're not important. I'm just going to let them go, or there's other strategies too, for if it's a medium task and you want to delegate it or automate it or whatever. The whole idea is really keeping your energy focused on the high priority things and not bogging yourself down with all the other little things, which can be scary, I think, at first, if you're not used to it.
We're cluttering our mind, right? Like we have a to-do list of like 20 things.
Yes.
As everybody has a different way of functioning. And I know people who do that 20 to-do list, and it's like for the week, and they'll cross off stuff, which is wonderful because it's for the week. But even that to-do list, I mean, having like 1,000 Post-its everywhere, like I do that, it's terrible, but it's clutter at the end of the day. And so what actually brings me joy is undoing those Post-its and throwing them away, especially when I've completed a task. But I think it clutters the mind. You can't think straight. You don't even want to work at one point when it's too crowded and too cluttered around you. Yeah. And so I completely think that there is absolute science behind this. It's just a science that may not be understood by everybody yet, but it is definitely science that is being proven.
It is.
With regards to energy and with regards to, all these things. So I love this method. One thing I do love about it also, which might seem a little odd to some people, is that I've seen her, and even in the book, it said this, like in the first book that she wrote, is that when you are discarding stuff, you appreciate it. You thank it for the time that you spent with it and the experiences that it gave you. Yeah. You're discarding it with respect. You're not just throwing it away as if it was the worst thing that could have possibly happened to you or without any meaning in life.
Yeah, that's, not everyone brings that particular thing up, but it is, I think, such a crucial step. And for people who really struggle with the letting go, I think that can really bring a lot of closure, and it makes things easier for them when you take that moment to reflect on. It's just the letting it go with gratitude is the exercise. And it can be a simple thank you, but it can also be like, thank you for the life lesson, or thank you for whatever role it played, or the good memories, or those kind of things. Even for people who are really good at discarding, like I think it's actually even more important for them to try the gratitude thing, because you can get into this like bye, just like kind of, but it does sort of kind of put you, the part of this method is there's the practical aspect, but going back into that mindset shift, it is to just start to really kind of come from a more abundant mindset of just be like, look at all the wonderful things that I have had and that have come into my life. And then also look at all the wonderful things that are still here. And just being able to have that greater sense of appreciation. It just feels better to come at it from that perspective versus the like, it's too much and just get out. Not that we've all had those moments, I think, but the more you practice kind of living intentionally and being that gatekeeper, both of the items in your home and the items on your schedule, or the items, on your to-do list, the easier it is to sort of nip that tendency to dip into overwhelm, like in the mud, you know what I mean? So that you can kind of prevent that or from happening as often, or like kind of see the warning signs. Like you can kind of sort of feel like, okay, this is getting to be too much. And that's actually where the maintenance comes in. You're talking about how you like rebounded in the closet. People ask me all the time, like, how often do you do this? And it's honestly, it's like when I just start to feel that itch, when I just start to kind of realize like, oh, this is too much. Like I'm going to do another quick pass. And every time that I've redone an area, it gets better and it gets better and it gets better because I've changed, I've learned, I've grown, and it gets easier and easier to kind of hone things.
Yeah.
And also, if you've done this a couple of times and that like one sweater or that one file, like this, like one, like, oh, project I'm going to get to someday, just like, okay, it's been 3 years and I have not decided to like put it on the docket. Like maybe it'll find me again if it was meant to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it becomes easier the more you do it, the more you realize like I'm doing okay without this stuff and I can probably go a little bit further too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gosh, such great tips. I mean, I love decluttering and I love that it is not just for the home. It is absolutely something that can be applied to our professional and, business lives as well. Now, I know that right now you are in a partnership and did you get certified? You got certified prior to your partnership, right?
I did. Yeah. I got certified actually prior to partnership. So I went through the course and then kind of started my business and like getting into my hours. I became certified very early into that business. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So you already had started your business, the Simply Maven business. And then I know you were saying earlier that Jane was actually your client at one point.
Yes.
And then turned into a co-owner with you. So how did that look?
Yes.
What was that process?
Yeah. So Jane and I had been co-workers or colleagues for a long time. We both taught fitness and I started the business. I was, like we mentioned, worked with her, and then things were ramping up. I had baby number 2, kind of all these things were happening, and I had already kind of moved on from the fitness career, but our friendship had remained. And, she was just talking about how, this was several years later since she and I worked together. Like, just like, what an amazing, we were just kind of chatting. Like, it was just such a profound change for her too. It really, she had gone through a big life change and had done some downsizing, and she's just like living simpler, just this newfound kind of energy, which it just was better. And so I was kind of at this point, like the Netflix show had happened. I had 2 little babies at home. And the one thing I have a hard time decluttering is ambitions and just aspirations. But I also was kind of at this point where I was really, truly realizing like, I cannot do this all. And again, like the KonMari method of like intentional living and how I want to be with my family was really telling me like, I want support in this. I want a partner in this. And so I want someone who can kind of complement me and who I can work together. And if anyone's read or familiar with like the 7 habits of highly effective people, I'm very good at the independent stage, but I realized that like my next step in life is to get better at like the interdependent stage and being able to like do more by relying on the help from others. Right. And Jane and I we'd worked together for a long time. We had a great working relationship and we were both really passionate about this. We know for a fact that we complemented each other in the best kind of ways. We have very different perspectives on things, and it is, but we also have amazing communication that allows us to kind of navigate those things. So that's how we settled on, like, we knew it would be a good fit, but it was still, I think, shifting from solopreneur to partnership was definitely a transition that took some navigating, which you helped us with. But it really has allowed us to be a stronger business and serve our clientele a lot better by filling in those gaps. And just kind of, I think that was one of my biggest lessons as a business owner. I think anyone who goes into entrepreneurship, at some point you have to figure out like what you can do and what you can't do. Yeah. And when it's time to bring somebody on board and in some other area, whether it's the accounting or the bookkeeping or the law, you cannot do it all. If you are, I don't know, then you're not doing anything else. So I still wanted to be a mom and I still wanted to spend time with my family. And so for me, having that balance was really important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that with us. It's really important to have partners that, again, are aligned with you, that there is synergy between the partners. And it's not that you have to be exactly the same, but complementing is what's important, that you complement each other's attributes, skill sets, strengths, and weaknesses. And it's not always easy to find that, but when you do find it and you need one, then that's a great place to start. But everything is always amazing in the beginning, and and hopefully it'll stay that way. But there's definitely conflicts that do happen, and disagreements or a difference in thought process or how you should be managing something, or how you should be tackling a certain challenge. And I know I was there to help you both figure out and do the LLC, and then also do the, company agreement between you and her, which was so important. And it's so important to have one. So whether somebody has an LLC or a general partnership or anything else, you need to have an agreement that defines the roles of each partner and what they're bringing to the table and what they're taking away from the table, and all of the other things in between, like exits. And what if somebody passes away or somebody has a divorce? What do we do at that point?
Yes. Yes. Well, thankfully, should any of those things occur, we've already kind of, it was, I will say, like, we were friends. This is so fun. And it is like very rosy, like, this is going to be great. And then you're like, you prompted us with those kind of questions. You're like, oh God, these conversations are uncomfortable. But it's so important to have those uncomfortable conversations while things are really good. So that you can kind of talk about them in a very objective and open, but not too emotionally triggered way, because you're not like dealing with the stress of it happening in the moment, right? You kind of already thought about it and put yourself in those shoes. We also did work with a couple different coaches and mentors that kind of really encouraged us to like do some strength profiles and see where we overlap and figure out what our lanes were going to be. And, like who would kind of take point on this and who would take point on that. And there's definitely been some trial and error. I mean, Jane will not be shy about telling you she is not technologically, it's just not her thing. So anything, there's an age difference between us. I am the tech person. And even I'm like an aging millennial. So I feel like I'm getting teched out sometimes too, but she's got a very different perspective. Like her experiences are different than mine. And so there's certain things where she's like, this is yours. It's very clearly, this is yours. This is mine. And then there are times where like, even like in a space, we were doing a pantry yesterday and she's like, this gap is bothering me. And I'm like, this gap is not bothering me. And so, it's just like, we just have to figure out like, even in marriage or in a partnership, sometimes you just gotta like, what, I don't care. You take that one. I'm going to go focus on this. And there's some things you just gotta let go, and I think that we're both really good at knowing like when those moments are, and just being able to say like, at the end of the day, I appreciate you, like everything that you've contributed. And we're going to let, figure out where those small things can go. But it does take really open and honest communication and pushing yourself to sometimes have uncomfortable conversations that feel awkward and weird, and being open and ready for that is really important.
Well, I think it's so cool that you and her both did, coaching and maybe exercises where you developed your relationship also. And I'm sure during those calls, at that time also, a lot of things might have come to the table. We were like, oh, okay. But the ability to talk through it, the ability to work through it, and also the commitment that I'm here for it. I'm not just going to walk away because whatever, because at the end of the day, a business partnership is like a marriage. It's just for your business. And the stress and all that stuff that comes from it can be overwhelming at times also, because that stress is not just my business stress, but it's also relationship stress between you and somebody else. And so it's good that those conversations happen in the beginning. Like you said, they are uncomfortable, and they're actually really uncomfortable for me to even bring up, because I'm just like, well, I'm not saying that, something's going to happen to you, but
death, sex, and money. No one wants to talk about it.
I'm like, but
if we don't talk about it, it gets worse.
Yeah, it's funny because whenever I do have that conversation with any of my clients, I'm always like trying to like give like a soft blow. I'm like, okay, so I understand these conversations are uncomfortable.
That's right.
But I'm like, we gotta have them. But anyways, but you guys were wonderful having these conversations. You were really good. And I like that even at that point, it wasn't just a simple, oh yeah, this is what we're going to do. But it was like, okay, we're going to think about it, deliberate, talk about it. And that's what you did. You were very intentional about all of that. And it's so important to have that intentionality behind, again, everything that we do. So
that's really it. I think honestly, because we specialize in KonMari, we both like personally had done this practice of really thinking about what are our priorities, what are our lifestyles, what's important to us, and we've kind of already done that work, then we bring that to the business partnership too. And so we're both pretty clear on where each other's boundaries are and what's important to the other person. And so we're able to respect that. And if there's any kind of tension or question, we're very good about making sure we address that early on, or just having the other person's perspective kind of at the forefront of our mind in any decision. It's always like, we're going to chat and then we'll come together.
Mm-hmm. And that also helps the business be successful, because when there is harmony in the business behind the scenes, clients feel it. Clients.
Oh, for sure. I've been in, yeah.
I mean, initially they may not see it or feel it, but eventually it extends out to them. Because there's a lot of disgruntledness, then there's the energy again that you're pushing out is your clients will feel it. So it's really important to have harmony. It's important to have that synergy so that it really just kind of expands into other spaces, into in life.
It absolutely does. Yeah. It's all, I mean, even if you're just a partnership, if you're, working in companies where that company culture or just that kind of what's going on behind the scenes can absolutely, it just, like you said, people can feel the energy, it plays into the subconscious, it changes how people react in situations and the decisions that they're going to make and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's very important to have that alignment.
Exactly. So I really liked reading about your pet peeve, because that's one of the questions.
Oh yeah.
It's like something I asked, and I'm just like, I'm interested in your pet peeve, but it's really funny that because it's so true. Can you share with us your pet peeve?
Yes, it's buying bins without a plan. I think I wrote like buying bins before you declutter, which is actually, that is part of it. You can buy bins prior to decluttering and be intentional about it. There is a way to do it, but most of us are not. Most of us are just like browsing the Target aisle. We went there for something else. We're like, I cannot resist this basket. And then you just like bring it home and you're like, well, now where does it go? Now, basket, and then you're just like haphazardly throwing things in different baskets. Anyway, like, so and I think when we start to feel overwhelmed, organized clutter is still clutter. And so we start to feel overwhelmed. We just want to do something. It's like in the pandemic when we all bought toilet paper just to feel like we were doing something. Sometimes buying bins, just like, well, I have the bins, so I'm on my way, like check it off the to-do list. But that's one of those things where it's like, if you don't do it in the right order, you're kind of just wasting your time and your energy and your money, So I think it's much more efficient to be very intentional about the organizing products that you buy, rather than kind of like fall for the newest gadget and and just go for it and just be like, well, I'll figure it out later. It might work for you, it might not, but it works a lot better to kind of have a very clear idea of what you own, what you need to store, and where it's going to be, so that you can find the product that truly matches it. That said, there are some very versatile products that can pretty much work anywhere, which Jane and I have learned through trial and error, just in our own homes and with clients and stuff like that. So I feel pretty confident in sometimes buying bins for other people because I know what I can do with them, but buying bins without a plan is a big no-no. It's just not.
We're all guilty of that.
We all think it's going to solve all the problems, but if buying bins was going to solve your problem, it would have been solved a long time ago.
Oh my God. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've walked through Container Store or Target and bought stuff and been like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to organize all of this stuff in there. But it's like, then that becomes overwhelming to me when I bring it home.
Well, when I ask people if they think they need to declutter, I would say like most people are like, no, I just need to organize. And I'm like, I know that's what you think. And that even happens with clients. They'll bring me over and like, well, I just need you to help organize. I'm like, well, when was the last time you went through all this? They're like, oh, it wasn't that long ago. And then we'll open up the bin and they'll get rid of 75% of it. Do you know what I mean? Because they're just like, oh, okay. And then we'll be like halfway through and like, oh, I guess you can tell that like I haven't gone through it in a while. I'm like, no. And I had a feeling.
That's so funny.
I'm always like, well, let's just take a quick pass. Chances are there's something in there. And so most people think they need to organize and they don't think they need to declutter. But chances are there's something, whenever I pull a drawer, someone always finds something in there that they're like, actually, I don't need that. Oh, and actually that either. And you know, that probably isn't, no, I don't really need that. I could let that go, you know? And so once we actually like start pulling things out of the woodwork, they're like, oh, maybe I should.
Maybe I just don't need any of this stuff.
Yeah. But when it's all put away, it feels like you don't need to declutter. Because for most of us, like, it all fits. I mean, there's some people who call me like, I very obviously need to declutter. Like it's spilling out. It's like floor to ceiling, you know? And of course that's where we start. For some of us, it's like, you know, it's in my closet. You know, it's put away like, but it's still background noise, even if it's in your closet, because you're not able to see the things that you really like. So when you go to get dressed in the morning, it's all, people feel like they get a whole new closet after we declutter, and they haven't bought anything. It's all just, they can just see the things that they really like now. And so it just feels fresher, and they can just go to it faster, and it's just easier. Or they rediscover treasures that were just like hidden among all the things. Like, oh, I forgot that I love that. We get used to just kind of grabbing for the typical thing or whatever, which is another decluttering tip. Just because you used it yesterday doesn't necessarily mean you need to keep it. Like, sometimes we just get into the habits. I think it's a better question, not do I use this, but like what would happen if I didn't have it? Because you may find that you actually have a different alternative. Like, you know, yes, you wore your sweatpants yesterday, but what happens if you don't have your sweatpants? You're going to put on some blue jeans instead. And I don't care if you want to wear sweatpants. If that's your ideal lifestyle, go for it. Just like make the case. That's all I want people to do. Sell me on the decision.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And it's so true because, you know, I'm like, while you're talking, I'm just going through my life. I'm like, okay. I'm wearing literally the same like 10 outfits all the time. And it's not because I don't have a bajillion other outfits sitting for me, but those are easy, accessible because I know it, I've worn it, and now it's become like a summer uniform. And it's like the funniest thing.
I love a good uniform. I'm more and more moving towards like, I just want to, you know, very easily grab whatever, put it on and get about my day. Cause that's me. That's my lifestyle. I do enjoy clothes and stuff, but I want it to be really easy for me to put together things that I like and then just like move on. I mean, I used to like try on all the different outfits and things. And if that's your jam, like that's awesome. That's just like that's not mine, you know? But, and I've got friends that are definitely more maximalist and like more, they love that creativity and those options and stuff like that. Again, it's intention. It's intention. What's the driving force behind?
Oh gosh, I love this. So I know there's people out there that are like, okay, we need Ashley, we need Jane. So how do they connect with you?
So our website is a great place to go, simplymavenhdx.com. And we've got lots of blog articles on there. Of course, you can click the contact button or you can schedule a free consultation with us, which is just like an easy 15-minute call about like how we can work together, where you're at and kind of what your goals are and what those next steps would be. If you're just kind of curious, you want to dabble more, like I said, I share blog posts pretty regularly on all different types of things, how to organize specific categories or areas to the more like, you know, imagining your ideal lifestyle, or, you know, how to deal with kids clutter, you know, like helping kids put things away, just like all the things that kind of all the tangible topics, right, that go alongside this. And you can sign up for the newsletter that way too. You can of course follow us on Instagram, simplymavenhdx is that. And we post tips and resources there too. So those are the two main places, I'd say, our website where you can sign up for the newsletter, and Instagram.
Awesome. And, you know, we all face challenges and we all try to overcome them. And sometimes they're really hard. But what is the one thing that anchors you?
Oh, gosh. Writing, I think. I think writing, like journaling, just getting my thoughts out and clear. So whenever, that's where like the whole brain dump comes in, I think it's like decluttering my thoughts, honestly. So it's like when my head starts to spin, I think when I can like put it down on paper and kind of just see, and then use those skills of like, okay, this is it. This is the not important stuff. This is the important stuff, and kind of really get to the heart of the matter. So yeah, I really enjoy even like writing the blog articles and stuff like that. It's attributed to Einstein, but it's like, if you can't say it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And so I love the idea of just kind of honing in on what is the simplest way to say this. But sometimes it takes writing it down and then slashing it to pieces until you can get to the heart of what's really going on.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and your tips. And I just love the KonMari method. So it's exciting, and it's nice to be able to be refreshed with it again by you.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for having me on and chatting about it. So fun.
Yeah, and all of your, details and everything will be in the show notes alongside some of the books that you've mentioned as well.
Great.
So thank you so much, Ashley.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Girija.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Law Chat. I hope this was super beneficial to you. I really enjoyed sharing this information with you today. And I have to ask you for a favor. Like I did in the beginning, I'm going to ask you again, please share this with your community, whether it's a friend, family, or another colleague, or someone else on your Facebook or Instagram or other social media spot. Share this, subscribe, and stay tuned for other episodes coming in so you are always up to date. But then also take another moment and share this episode with your community, because when you share it with everybody else, not only are they benefiting, but also the information that I'm sharing is reaching out to more people, because at the end of the day, we want to rise together with our community, and I can only do that with your help. Now, I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you tuned in, and I want to hear from you as well. So shoot me a DM on Instagram at GBP Law or at Law Chat with Girija. I would love to hear from you. I would love to also hear what other episodes that you would like to hear about, topics that you want to hear about, and also just connect with you. And thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, cheers.